Okay, problem 2 is just a quick review of journal entries, and they give us a bunch of transactions, and I'm going to talk you through these. And then I'll show them to you in the finished form. We issued common stock in exchange for $102 in cash. We're going to debit cash $102, credit common stock $102. We purchased inventory on account for $37,000. We used a perpetual inventory system, which means we're debiting the inventory account, $37,000, crediting accounts payable, $37,000. If we used periodic inventory, we would be debiting either merchandise or purchases. And then we paid an insurance company for a 1-year insurance policy, debit prepaid insurance and asset, credit cash, and the amount in the sample problem I'm using is $26.40. Sold merchandise on account. The cost of the merchandise was $7,200. Keep in mind they use perpetual inventory, so there's 2 journal entries here. One to recognize the sale, one to update the inventory. So we have debit accounts receivable, $12,002. Credit sales revenue, $12,002. That recognizes the sale part of it. And then we have the inventory adjustment. So we're going to debit cost of goods sold, $7,200. Credit inventory, $7,200. If any of these were tricky, that was the one. Borrowed $32,000 from a local bank. Principal and interest at 10% is to be repaid in 6 months. So we're going to debit cash, $32,000. Credit note payable. We might want to make a note to remind ourselves of the interest rate and the payable date. And then the last one that I'll be able to show you on this page is paid employees $6,200 for wages for the first half of the month. So that will be a debit to wage expense and a credit to cash. So the first journal entries will look like that. That's the journal in good form for the first half of the month. Okay? Second half of the month, they tell us we're down to there. Sold merchandise for $10,200. The cost of the merchandise was $6,200. Again, remember that's 2 journal entries, one to record the sale, one to record the change in inventory. So we're going to debit the cash or accounts receivable for $10,200 and credit revenue $10,200, and then we have to handle the inventory adjustment. So we debit cost of goods sold and credit inventory $6,200. And then we paid $15,200 to suppliers for the merchandise purchased on the 2nd, and that's simply a debit to accounts payable, $15,200, credit to cash, $15,200. Collected $6,100 on account, debit cash, $6,100, credit accounts receivable. Paid $1,200 for gas and electric. So we're going to have a debit to utility expense, $1,200, credit to cash, $1,200, and then paid $4,200 rent for the building, $2,100 for January, $2,100 for February. This is a compound journal entry because we have 2 debits offset by 1 credit, and it looks like that. We have a debit to prepaid rent, we have a debit to rent expense, and we have a credit to cash. After we've posted all those, it says let's put them into T accounts, and I'll just show you the first couple of T accounts because I'm sure you're pretty comfortable with all of these. But as you see, that's a T account. We've got all the information on there. Now, the difference would be between that and a journal, or a ledger, excuse me. If this were the GL, instead of having that column, we would have a running balance. So we would have 1-1, then 1-4, so we would list that all out, and we would keep the running balance. That's the only difference, and that's what the T accounts look like. Just a good overall review. The things to remember was the compound journal entry for the prepaid rent and the rent expense, and the perpetual inventory, so we have to remember to constantly update the inventory.